All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us. So today, this is me here. We're going to be doing a Q&A. So basically what I did for ages on Monday Night Draw, I'll actually have a Monday Night Draw coming up in a few weeks. Got one planned. But regardless, we're just going to be taking questions, and I'll be, drawing examples and answering the questions as best as I can for the next, 2 hours or so. So we're ready to go.
Yeah, there were some. I know there was some in the community tab that David got, and then yeah, whatever you guys want to know, ask away. I'll relay them to Dave. And
Anthony G's here, JDSCT, Dan Genovesi's here. Good to see everybody. We have Doug here and MenOTF. Okay, so because we don't have a question yet, I'm going to go with the list that I have.
all right, I'm gonna hide my face, and Dave can show us how it's done.
Jimmy Reyes says, I was getting out of miss the first 20 seconds. I should just sit here quiet for 20 seconds. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do, this is curly hair, and this is a question from the community tab earlier on. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start. And when I think about curly hair, it comes down to a line of beauty, which is a long curve followed by an opposing shorter curve, which you guys have all seen before. And so I'm going to draw my head here. I won't bother drawing the face. But basically just a really simple head. And so I'm going to start in the center here. And I'm going to do wavy on this side and then curly on this side. So here's a wave here. I want to make sure to avoid doing this, which is, it's like a noodle. I did a video on that like ages and ages ago. So I'm going to try and make sure to go more flat with that. So it's like a ribbon, you can see. So here we go. And on the underside, I'm drawing hair kind of connecting up in there. And you don't want to be 100% even with that, like line, line, line. So a couple closer together here. Here's a couple a little further apart. A piece coming out here that's joining here. And then maybe a couple more under there. And I can even take my simple line of beauty and just bring it around again for another one and just connect another. Let me erase the side of the head a little bit there just to make it a little more clear. And I do hair like this, all the time. I'm coming in a little cold. I have to admit, I'm feeling really cold drawing right now. And I have been drawing today. It's not like I haven't been, but for whatever reason, I'm feeling very, very stiff. So I'll have to bear with me a bit. There's another curl out here. And there's another line of beauty here. I'm going to start wider, go really thin here, widen out it just a little bit more again. And it's like calligraphy almost, but, not with black ink. Not filled in with black. It could be. See, look at this. I'm all stiff. I'm talking in circles now. So here we go. So here's basically kind of a wavy hair on this side. And so for this side, I'm going to do curly. And for that, I'll just go much tighter with my arc and much smaller. And then I can just create curls kind of cascading down over each other. So here's another one here. Another one here. And I'm just going to draw a bunch of these. Until I start to get something. And I'm kind of interconnecting them, basically, like I'm layering, which you kind of have to do ultimately. So here we go. And this would need to be tightened up just a little bit. But so there's curly hair. Really. And then from here, I could go in and start to add a little bit of line weight, maybe a little shadow under here, depending on how dark I want it, and clean things up and make it nicer. But the general construction is really just that. It's this right here, just tightened up and then layered on top of each other. With this side here, I want to make sure that all of my hair starts here, basically ends down here. Like I don't want to have too many curls up here because that would be a very short hair. You could do it, but for the most part, the hair should be an even length. Whereas with this, I'm just drawing little short curls and they can terminate really anywhere, and they should. So that's really all there is to it.
Awesome.
And so, yeah.
Something kind of related to hair. Well, not kind of related. It is. It's hair. But Felipe Trinidad wants to know how to draw hair from the back. It's a very interesting question. I guess I've never really.
Okay.
Because you can't find much reference. Short hair, long hair. You can't find really how to do that.
So here's my ear. Here's my head. Put a neck on there. And there's my head kind of from behind. And so from behind, I could put it in front of the ear, or I'll put it behind the ear for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it from the front here. So this, I'm not going to see where it connects to the front, but I'm going to start it here, cascade it back over the ear, and then just do my same kind of curls around. And along the top, I'm going to curl along this way, and then just let it flow out. And then from the back, I can just kind of go straight down and curl. And what I want to do is basically, if I had a ball, I'm curving out this way and then more shallow this way and then this way around toward the back of the ball because it's a sphere, you know? So I'm a little more flat here. I'm rounded out this way here and rounded back this way here. So there you go. Pretty simple, really. I mean, and obviously that's a very simple drawing, but I mean, that's enough to get you the idea of how it goes. That's longer hair. So let's do short hair. So here's my ear. I don't know why I'm trying to make the ear nice, but you know, it's kind of a landmark. Okay. So for shorter hair, what I want to do is I want to start basically in the middle, right about here, and come up over the ear. And I'm going to give it just a little bit of a curve. It doesn't need to be totally consistent, but I'm going to come from this point here. And then along this, I can start to have some shorter hair. You'll notice how people start to have shorter hair just along the back here, just like this. And then when I get to the top, I'm going to do the same thing that I have here. Now I could, you know what, so what I would do is just take this and then I would layer this on top of it. But for this one, let's do something that's a little bit more kind of slick back. So I've got my peak along the temple there. So I'm going to connect to that along the temple. And then along the top, I'm going to raise it up a little bit and give it a little bit of volume. And then connect it just in like this. So that's basically it. Yeah, it's a pretty simple thing, but it's really just flowing your lines out from, you know, from proper points that kind of make sense. So yeah, in its simple terms, and obviously the rest of it, you know, lighting it and that kind of thing, follows the same rules that it always would. So there you go. There's awesome. hair lit from the back. I saw we had, you know, let me roll back up here. So I have from Drake Swafford, can you draw a character running and walking with flared jeans on? I asked this because my comic takes place in the 2000s. I remember flared jeans twice in my life. You know what I especially remember? I remember wearing flared jeans in the 80s because, you know, that's what I got as a hand-me-down, and I'm the only kid that's wearing these, and they're corduroy, and yeah, anyway. Okay, so I'm going to draw it from the side for this one. So here's my figure. Let's just draw the trunk. Here's my pelvis. I'll have the front leg coming out this way. So, I mean, the first thing you really want to do is you want to make sure to draw your anatomy at least decently accurately, because trying to draw any kind of folds with no actual anatomy under it is always a mistake. So there you go. I mean, it's not the most accurate thing in the whole world. I'm going to lighten that down. And so you'd have a bit of a fold kind of catching in here. This would all be pretty tight. You have some folds here. The folds from the upper part of the leg curve this way. I don't know why. And the folds from the bottom curve this way, and they just do. So I just do that. Why that is, I don't know. I don't care, but that's just what they do. So I'm going to draw this leg here. It's going to be, let me erase just a little bit. Okay, so it's going to be pretty tight along the front of the leg because it's flying back. But I do want to give it a bit of a kick out kind of cuff at the bottom because it's very common. And then I'm going to come out like this with my bell bottom. And then it's just a matter of continuing through your folds down the jean. Also, I've got a seam. I'm going to run it along my folds just like this. And so for here's my other leg. The top of the leg curves this way. The bottom curves this way. Again, it doesn't matter why. It just does. I'm going to have some folds coming along from the crotch here along the leg. And for this one, I'm not going to kick it all the way up, so it's going to be kind of attached to that foot. What I'm going to do is just flare it out kind of evenly. Just like this. And then the folds still kind of radiate out from the knee. So kind of like that. And, lighting folds and all that kind of thing is obviously its own thing, but it's important to know you're going to have a bunching of folds around the knees. You're going to have bunching basically wherever you have, a flat surface of fold and you have a bend, you have bunches in there, and that makes it pretty easy. And then, so I'm just going to flare it out basically like that. So there you go.
Nice. Now you got to draw the boots with the fur.
And we have a question actually from the Lone Draftsman for $5, and thank you very much. And he says, any advice on drawing tread on boots? Pretty hard for me. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my boot like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw my shoe. And this is a whole other issue, and we're not going to go into that for this one, but now I've got my heel here. And so at the front, what I want to do, first of all, is I want to give it a nice, big, thick sole. So it's a pretty simple shape. And then my back, I've already got a thick sole. And now all I need to do is just create my divisions along here. And now I'm going to draw the dimension for that. Like make it a dimensional shape as opposed to a line. And it's going to connect in here like this. And it still have one solid shape, you'll notice. And the back, I'm going to do the same thing. So here we go. By the way, very thin here and much wider here. And the reason for that is this is nowhere near as foreshortened as this would be. And there we go. So that's the basics. Now, all of these lines here kind of come in toward the center and go like this. And by the way, I do this if I'm drawing boots. This is how I do it because it is a hassle. If you're trying to draw these all as individual, see, that's way too small there. I'm just going to ignore that. So there you go. Now I've got that. I'm going to go ahead and erase this down just a little bit. And then from there, I can go ahead and actually draw these shapes. I'll just make this, give this a space here. And now you can see I'm drawing these kind of more complex shapes, but I'm just drawing it along a very, very simple shape, and it makes it so much easier. I would see the inside of this here. Whoop. I'm doing this fast. I'm starting to warm up though. It already feels weird, Eric, for me to be doing this without Meredith cut me off. She would have shut us down by now. So there you go. I could do the back ones too, but I think you get the idea. That's exactly how it's done. Then in the center, you've got like 3 bits in here, and they're just like a T shape, just like this. And so from here, you just draw that as a dimensional shape, just along the simple T. And by the way, my shoe is lining up along that line. So I want to make sure that I'm lining up there, and then the front of my shoe is lining up here. So I want to make sure to keep that stuff in kind of perspective with the shoe. So here's another shape here. Another one here. Some artists are incredibly good with this and very clear, and everything's very consistent. I'm not as clear. Also, this is not erasing. So, and then all I'm going to do is just connect this up just to give this some dimension. So I'm just basically making this a 3D shape. So that's it. And then, the rest is lighting, which is, lighting is always kind of its own thing, but that's the basics of drawing treads on a boot. They're very easy if you approach it the right way. And I think that was actually a great question. So I'm going to scroll down here. Question for the community, says Dave Thomas. I hate putting word bubbles on my pages. Which free software would you guys recommend to overlay word bubbles? Thanks. You know what? Hopefully somebody in the chat has an answer for that one, because I don't know.
What was the question? Placing word bubbles and digital?
Yeah, basically a program to put word balloons in.
Clip Studio is pretty good at that.
Well, there you go. Clip Studio.
Yeah.
Dan Genovesi has a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Dan. You've recommended learning to draw by studying other artists. What if you struggle with fundamentals? Can you learn fundamentals by studying artists, or should you lock them down first and try other means? You can, to a degree. You can learn fundamentals from studying other artists. Every artist has strengths and flaws in their work. All of us do. It's impossible to not. We're not drawing life. We're drawing kind of an artist's interpretation of life from our head. So there's going to be things, and the more you know, the more you can be aware of the things that an artist is doing wrong, or not necessarily wrong, just in a way that you don't want to interpret it. Like, I have artists that are favorite noses. Let's just say noses. My favorite artist on the face of the earth for noses is Kevin Nolan. He draws the greatest noses and the greatest lighting on noses. It looks amazing, and I get so much from that. And that really that's like my nose reference. And, so in that particular instance, it's worked for me really well, and different artists might work for you. It can be that way for all kinds of different things. But what you need to be careful of is, if you are drawing an arm and you don't know where the muscles go, you will have an extraordinarily difficult time in interpreting whether an artist is drawing something. It won't make sense to you, basically. And it gets really easy to just draw something that starts looking a little bit wild. So what I would say is, when it comes to fundamentals, yes, you need to learn where all of those muscles go, how they connect. It's a laborious process to learn all that. It's relatively simple, and it's not. It takes repetition, and you do need to do that. And I really recommend you do that, and you intersperse it with looking at artists that do it well. You'll find the more you do it and the more artists you look at, you'll see where they're using that information and stylizing it, and then you can choose to stylize it that way or not. But if you just stylize and you don't learn the fundamental, you're right, you'll have endless trouble. So I would say study so you understand where all of the muscles go, what all the muscles are. You don't need strict anatomical knowledge. Like, for instance, in the back, there are layers of muscles and like thin sheets of muscles. And there's craziness. It's insanity. Learning all that stuff, I think, is a real detriment. I don't know anybody I've never run into anybody that's learned all of those muscles, all the little, maybe Proco, Proco knows everything. But aside from Proco, yeah, you have to, and this is why I like the Bart Sears approach so much. It takes muscle groups and connects them together, which is why I really recommend Bart Sears' books if you can find them.
It was a, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Oh no, that was it.
Okay, a pretty common question. I know it's been asked before, and I think it's been answered before. I'm not sure if it was in a tutorial video or not, but basically the neck, the hole, and the head, how those relationships work to the torso at various angles. It's a pretty common question. Okay,
so I'm sorry. I was. The neck, torso, and head proportions.
Yeah, kind of like how to align the neck hole and the neck and the head
Okay, so
at various angles.
okay, so I'm going to draw a chest. The first thing to be able to do is to draw, here's a chest shape. And this is just, a pretty standard kind of, I'm looking up at it a little bit. It's very superhero. I'm starting to draw the arm. I don't want to do that. And here it is from the back. And so you'd see the kind of center line along the back. What I can't really see there is the neck. So connecting that can be a little bit difficult. The neck would actually be like this, and you're looking up at it. And so the head would, and I personally, I got to say, I like drawing the head and then connecting it with the neck. Maybe that's not the best approach, but I'm connecting it. So what I'm doing here is I've got my collarbone here, and you have a large muscle here that connects from the collarbone to just underneath the ear. And then you got the back of the neck here. And that's really how you can kind of get that head centered on there. And if you notice, I just made a big mistake there. See where my center line is? My center line based on that should be there. And I actually do this fairly often. It's not such an uncommon thing for me to make that mistake. And I just have to realign my torso because it's easier to fix that than the head. And it does happen. So yeah, speaking of aligning, it happens to us all. Now, from a different angle, let's look down at it. So I'm going to look down at my torso just a bit. So here's the top. I'm going to draw my center line here. Here's this. This would be my rib cage kind of shape here. Connecting up here. Here's my armhole. My other armhole is here. It's going to disappear back there. I could kind of put it in that way. And my collarbone is going to come out here. My neck is going to connect right there, just in front of the collarbone. And my neck is a tube. So what I'm going to do, since I'm kind of coming up at just about this angle, I'm going to connect my neck just at about that angle and then just draw another circle here. I mean, I got to be honest, I don't actually do this, but to make it more clear, and then your head is going to attach to that. So what you want to do is you imagine you've got this muscle here. Your ear is going to connect to that muscle. Your jaw is going to go here. It's going to connect forward a little bit because your head is still forward of the neck. Now it's important to make sure to not draw. Here's your head. And then you have a neck on the back of the head. That's not how it goes. Your neck really comes out much more from the center. But you can see, even coming out from the center, your chin obviously projects out. So I'm going to project out my chin. Let's erase some of this back here for a little clarity. And now I can kind of connect my my neck on this way. I feel like I'm a little too wide here. And this is where, you connect things. Unless you're some kind of a master mathematician with your drawing, which I am not, you're going to have to make changes. And I was too big in the back there, so I just adjusted that down to fit properly. And really be prepared when you're drawing to make those kinds of adjustments to make it all fit. If you draw a shape and that shape is like sacrosanct or sacrosanct or whatever the heck the word is, I don't know. But, if you can't change it, you're going to run into trouble. So there you go. That's it from looking down at it. Looking directly up at it is really the same as this. Use the same, make the neck a tube, connect the ear, and then you can connect your muscles, and it works basically the same. So that's really the way you get it connected. I see artists very, very often draw a character that's bent over, and the head is drawn directly centered right here. And that is ignoring the neck, and it can look very, very awkward. It's a very common mistake. I see a question from Paulus Arts, and he says, what I want to know is, what can I do to draw quicker? Are there recommended exercises? I don't know. Okay, so I don't do drawing exercises, but what I would say to be able to draw quicker, I'm going to draw, let's just draw an arm, So here's my arm. I'm sketching it in. And now I want to start drawing it. When you start, it's a real tendency to really kind of do this. You're really kind of following along and finding that line and going, very methodically. And you can spend quite a bit of time. What you really want to learn is the ability to really just throw your line. And that takes a little bit of time and control. Not too much, but like for this line along the face here, I'm just going to start here. I know I want it to be here. I'm going to connect here. I can, go back and forth a little bit to kind of shore it up, but I want to think more in terms of throwing my line. So I'm going to throw that here. That's all one line shape. Another line shape here. Another one here. I know I've got a bit of a shape here. And it's much quicker for me to start throwing in like this. I would say it's possible, if you're not really comfortable with this, to start getting lost because you're concentrating so much on throwing the line instead of really thinking about every shape. So at that point, what you're going to do is just take your kneaded eraser, lighten it down, and then just give it another go just to clean things up a little bit. But that will speed you up. Beyond that, okay, here's another technique. I can fill in shadow like this and use the tip of my pencil and be really methodical about it. Or I can just do this. I can take the side of my pencil and kind of throw that in a whole lot quicker. Now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for something small like this, but you start getting bigger with your shadows, and that can really help. You can save a whole lot of time just by throwing it in with the side of the pencil as opposed to trying to fill in a massive shape with the tip of your pencil. But in order to do that effectively, you want to make sure that you've got that shape delineated first. If you just go in and just start shading like this, you'll end up with a muddy mess. So you want to have, I'm going to make this a shape here. There you go. I'm going to go in with the side of my pencil. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't do this for something this small, but just as an example, I can be fairly messy with this and it still goes in nice and clean because I have that delineated. That will speed you up quite a bit too. Other than that, really the biggest thing is drawing is like handwriting in a lot of ways. The more you write your name, the more fluid and natural it gets. And it is the same with drawing. So the more you do it, it will become more fluid and you'll become naturally faster.
Nice. There's been 2 questions regarding, it looks like hair is a very big topic tonight. Someone was asking about beards, how you would approach drawing that and like long beards.
Okay.
Find one second.
Okay, well, you know what?
Long beards like Gandalf.
Okay, so I'm going to draw a nose on here. Hard to draw a beard without a nose. It's a bit of a, I guess it's possible. So here's my eyes. I'm not going to draw those, and my mouth is just going to be here. I'm not going to detail that out too much. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to draw my mustache, and I'm just going to, because a beard includes, unless you don't, and I'm just drawing, you can see it's a bit of a flat line of beauty, just kind of like this. And I'm doing the same thing I did with hair. I'm rounding that way, and then I'm going to go more flat toward the center, and then round out this way, like this. So there's my mustache. And now for the beard, the first thing I'm going to do is erase my chin. I'm going to erase some of this hair out of the way too, just to give me some more room to draw the side of the beard. Okay, so let's give my character an ear. So here we go. So what I want to do first, you've got your sideburns. And your sideburns are basically, and also you have, here's your cheek here. It's going to kind of come up into the cheek just a little bit. And so I'm just connecting up through from my sideburns and then down from the sides. I don't really start from the side though. I start from the center. So I don't know why I'm doing that. Here's my lip. Give it a bit of a shadow. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with my mustache, but now I can just kind of go longer and give my character a beard just coming out like this. That line didn't really erase well.
So basically the same principles that you were describing earlier.
Yeah. And so, and now this is going to connect here. I can connect my mustache up into it a little bit, but it is not connected. And this is going to, usually you end up getting a bit of a peak downward this way. And obviously it'll be longest toward the middle. And obviously it depends on the person, how long you want their beard to be or how curly, but that's basically the idea right there. So there you go. That's a beard. I mean, they're pretty simple. And now in terms of lighting it, I'm going to do that actually. Let me put a bit of a shadow below the nose here. And then I'm going to put a bit of a shadow below my mustache. And add this shadow in below the lip. I can kind of connect that in here. And then under the beard, obviously I can catch some shadow where it's, you know, sitting over the chest. And I don't like how I did this here. And this came as a result of me trying to start from the side, which I just don't do. So let's fix that. I'm going to kind of sculpt it down this way just a little bit more. So come out at the side, so you know, erase that line that I put in there. But it's like some of these things I think, this is easy. And then I do it slightly different than I would normally do it, and everything falls apart for me. So yeah, there you go. There's basically a beard. It's a pretty simple thing. I don't want a hard line here, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bring some shadow down into this a little bit, just to soften it out into the beard, so I don't have like this hard line that lines are connecting up into.
Can't remember who asked it. They were asking about like 2-point light sources. I guess they're really looking at core shadows. How would you approach that?
Okay, so I'm going to draw. Well, you know what? Let's go with the arm that I already have here. Let me just erase this, the proper side of my eraser. Okay, so what I want to do first is I'm going to have my major light source coming from here and my smaller light source coming from here. You could do it one way or the other. It really doesn't matter. You know, as a matter of fact, I always light things from this side, so let me do it the opposite way. This will be the smaller, and this will be the brighter light source. So what I want to, the fact that this light source here, and I'm going to have it coming from here, and the other one, I'm really just going to have kind of coming from the side. And I'm doing that because it's easier. So because I've got my major light source coming down this way, I know this whole area here is going to be light. And this is basically a sphere, which would be lit like this. And because I have my light coming from the side, my sphere would be lit more like this. And so that's really the concept I'm going to take into this. I'm going to start, and obviously I have details, so it's not, you know, purely a sphere. And what I'm going to do, and this might be easier for you, you want to be a little light with your pencil because you don't want to erase a huge headache, but I'm going to draw all the way to the edge and make sure that this light source is working first. I'm going to cast a shadow from this bit onto here. We're going to be erasing all this, so it is what it is, but it's really good to make sure that your lighting works well going in. So I could actually darken this. You know what? Let me do it, actually. Let's go nice and dark here. So there's a single point of lighting. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all along here. I'll still be able to see it well enough. And you can see, I can see it. So I'm just going to reconstitute the edge of my line here. I still want to make sure to get that overlap because this is cutting in front of this muscle here. A bit of an overlap here. And just in the line. And here. And a little bit of an overlap there. And so now I want to just open up along this side here. And I still have my cast shadow here. It's still casting a shadow down, but then this opens up here. And that can kind of connect just like this. I'm going to shadow this shape here, but it's catching some light along the side. It's casting a shadow down onto the muscle behind it here. And then I'm going to light that the same way that I had it. I'm going to put another muscle in there and just connect them that way. And I'm just making sure to open up that side. This is truly a much easier way to get this kind of lighting working if you're not 100% comfortable with it. rather than, because the alternative really, and I see this quite a bit, is just to draw, like just to erase out a simple line all the way along the side of something. I don't really like this here. So let me see if I can refine that a little bit. So what I'm going to do is connect this here. I want to make sure that I'm not drawing that line through, so it's kind of breaking the illusion a little bit. My holding line was cutting right down into the shadow, which I don't like when I'm doing like a side light like that. So there you go. That's really all there is to it, and that's how it works for everything, a face or whatever there is. It's just a matter of a dominant light source and then a smaller light source. Yeah. And by the way, this light source here needs to be not coming from the side. I should mention, this is really kind of coming from behind. So if I were to draw it from like a cone, it would be coming in this way.
Yeah, if it was from the side, that core shadow would be shifted and very visible.
Yes, you wouldn't really get a core shadow. You would just have an overall lighting. So there you go.
Yep.
Blackbeard says, I tried your way of simply drawing shapes for figure drawing, and after getting comfortable with that, I start with anatomy or something else. Yes, and actually my next video is going to be coming out very, very soon. I'll have that one out within the next week and a half or so on the next step to go from just drawing simple figures, how to start really learning anatomy, all of that kind of thing. And it does end up getting more complex, unfortunately. The foundational stuff is simple, but it's difficult to really get a firm enough grasp to be a proper foundation for your artwork. And the next step is much more difficult. And that is really where you start learning the minutiae, where all the muscles go. I think worrying about lighting at that stage, at the next stage, is still a huge mistake. So you really want to just focus on making your anatomy really work. It's actually in some ways harder to draw anatomy with no lighting, because you'd be amazed at the sins you can cover with a big shadow or a cape.
Yep. Let's see. Daniel L asked earlier, could you show how to draw explosions? And he's also thanking you for all the tutorials.
Well, thank you very much, Daniel. All right, here we go. Explosions. So the first thing I need to know is where my explosion's coming from. So if I had like a point right here, my explosion's coming from there, and I'm going to radiate it out, you know, like this. That line already didn't line up with my original dot. And so I'm going to start actually just by drawing like some kind of flashes of stuff flying out. And I'm going to be really loose with this at first. I just want to kind of get some stuff established, kind of bounce line a little bit. Here's another little bit here, and just kind of just relax with it just for a minute. If I were to draw all of these exactly how I just did this, I would have a real mess. I'm going to draw another one here. And I'm going to draw, this is basically what I'm doing here is I'm drawing lines coming from this point. I'll do some more here. And I'm going to go ahead and erase this, but it's going to give me something to work with. And so from here, I want to make sure that if I have the explosion coming toward me, I'm overlapping my shapes like this. And this would be closer than this, and this would be closer than this. So I've got something here, and I want to keep these pretty loose and not get overly stiff with this, and just start to get some of this established here, just like this. I'm going to kind of come behind that bit there, behind this here. And now, because this is starting to go back, I'm going to start layering the other way, backwards. And I'm just going to kind of keep working with it until I like it. And get rid of this here. And I'm still very loose. because I just want to get this kind of established in and be happy with it. If I do this and I start drawing really tight shapes, it really locks you into something that you may not like. So here's a bunch of those kind of shapes thrown together. And from here, I'm going to start to add some lighting to this. I'll make this one a bit heavier. Now, this is a stylized thing. Bear that in mind. It's comic books, and so many things are a bit of a cipher, and it has a real basis in reality. If you really want an explosion to look truly real, you can, find reference and really methodically try and do that. This is a bit more of a cipher, a simplification. Go nice and heavy with this one. And I'm just kind of making this up. I don't want to have everything the same width. I mean, that's really fundamentally what it comes down to. And for the most part, I have this explosion flying away from me. I don't know why I made that choice, but it's kind of mostly the choice that I made. Have some streamers coming out here. They don't even have to all be lit. And I'm just connecting these shapes together. And you just have to be very random with this stuff. And if you're not, you can start to end up with something that looks very stiff pretty quickly. So there's just a little more here. Going pretty loose with this, obviously. But, I mean, this is a general idea. And then I'm going to start connecting in some of the, the stuff that I drew earlier. I want to have this flying out, so I'm going to draw like some smoke coming from this too. So it's breaking up into smoke. So I'm just layering my curved shapes over each other. Give it like some debris. Another little bit here. And then this stuff here, like this would be like the actual blast. I've totally forgotten where my point is, by the way. I have it like way up here. So, bear that in mind. I didn't exactly do it properly.
Secondary explosion.
There you go, secondary explosion. I mean, it's still working, but I definitely missed, and I would have to fix that. If I really needed it to be coming from here, and that was like an important thing, I would obviously have to fix that. I could have some more, kind of explosion energy coming out from here. I don't know how that works, really. I don't like it. Let's get rid of that. And then the rest is really just kind of cleaning this up and making it, just a little bit nicer. This could go into like light smoke here. I feel like I might have gone too far there. But I did it all so lightly that I can pick and choose what I want to keep of those shapes. I'm not married to any of it. And I'm going to do another streamer along the ground here. Coming out like this. I could even do, some blast along the ground. This is probably better with a ruler. A technique that and I wouldn't want to blast it. I wouldn't want to draw that all the way to the middle. Something that I really like that can actually really work is I'm going to draw like a rock or something, and then I can draw some shadow behind it and kind of stream some stuff just like that. I'm going to draw another bit here. And because I'm lighting these from this as a light source, and my shadows are radiating out, it really looks like you have like a strong light source in the middle. So there you go. It's a bit of a messy shadow or a messy explosion, but that is exactly how I do it.
Let's see. Goozy soup, not quite sure how to pronounce it. Question: how would you recommend learning to draw poses from imagination, particularly how should you balance time spent on reference versus imagination?
Um, that is actually, it's a really good question, and I don't know that my answer is going to be as good as a question. It very much depends on the style that you want to do. First of all, if you want a very realistic style, something that is really lifelike, you're going to be, unless you're, there's nobody that can draw something that's incredibly realistic. I think as close as you can get is like an Ivan Rice, it's beautifully realistic. I'm sure he uses reference for some things, but he draws out of his head, and that takes years to really get that good. And in order to get that good, you need to be drawing from life a lot. And I can tell that he does. Like you look at figures in a coffee shop, things like that. He does that all so beautifully, and you can't just do that from your head. So that's reference based. You want to use your imagination, but you want your imagination to be as grounded in reality, and depending on your style, artists that reflect that style as much as you possibly can. And you have 100 years of thousands, who knows how many comic artists to look at, to find ways of doing this. Like this kind of an explosion, I learned not from my head. I learned this from looking at other things, and I've learned how to draw it from my head just from repetition. Guns, I can do the same way. I can basically fake a gun pretty well, and I don't have to use it. Or buildings, I can fake a building pretty well, but there's no way I could do that without using reference initially, and I still do break out reference quite a bit. Otherwise, things start getting really, really stale. So, yeah, it's a bit of a complex answer, unfortunately.
Let's see. Guy asked earlier, hey David, love the stream. Can you show how to properly render things like armor, metal, people, trees, etc.? Pretty loaded question, I guess. I know someone in community tab also asked about metal.
Right. Okay. So we're going to go back, and I'm going to use this right here as an example. I've already got this filled in with a fairly heavy shadow, and you'd think, gee, that would be tough to make look like metal. But metal is very, very reflective. So you really, the number one rule is you're not going to draw your shadow all the way to the edge of something. So let me erase it here too, and bring that in. I'm gonna do this one first, and then we'll do it without heavy lighting. So it's just more of a metallic kind of a thing. Bear in mind, excuse me, that this is also a cipher. So much of drawing comics is, So the theory behind this would be, if you have like a tube, it's going to take whatever reflection you have, and it's not going to draw shadow so much as it's going to draw the reflection and stretch it all along that tube. So it's reflecting whatever is there, a dark thing, all along that tube. And you're always going to get, this would be like a Fresnel lighting, which is very, very strong on anything that's reflective. So I'm going to do it up here too. And then if I just draw some other little bits of detail, and this is where really throwing your line is important to sell this. So I'm just going to throw some nice, thin, relatively tight lines on there, and it starts looking pretty reflective already. I got a little bit tight in there, so it's not as ideal as it could be. And so what I'm going to do here is just those little lines, I'm just going to add that. Jim Lee is a master at this, but you really want to, this style of doing this, I would really recommend Will's Portaccio. Look at Wetworks. Will's Portaccio's Wetworks is, because every character is made out of metal like this, and this is really how he approaches it. So I have a bit of a shadow. It's coming down away from the light here, and if there were a horizon, the horizon would probably reflect around there. So I'm going to draw just a little bit of detail there, just like that. And I could do it here too, you want to be careful to not get too carried away. Just a little bit here, and you can see that this is starting to look like metal very, very quickly, and I'm really not doing much. You have to be careful not to get too carried away. So there, that pretty much looks like a metal dude now. And I mean, you can see I almost did nothing with that. Very simple. And I'm going to do, let me continue this line here and draw, basically I'm drawing this up here on the opposing side, just like that. and it makes it look very, very metallic, very easily. And if I was to do the same thing without really a core shadow, so let me draw that arm again. So here's my very stiff, straight arm. I'm gonna, now I recommend when you're learning how to draw arms, you really want to draw the anatomy in there. So you're not just faking it. I'm not gonna do that because we're not working on that right now. So I'm just gonna draw my outline. This would be basically my cartoon. I'll give it a little bit of line weight. I'm not drawing any detail on the inside though. A little bit right there and here. So there you go. There's my arm basically drawn in. I'm going to draw it lighting the same way that I did this here. And so I'm just going to use my lines this time. And this will give you something that's more, akin to like ice as opposed to like a metal, which can have a little bit more shadow involved, and it works. Like Silver Surfer would be fine that way. But Iceman, I wouldn't do that. It just doesn't look right. So I'm defining all the same shapes, but I'm just kind of throwing a line, doubling up my lines, tripling them, whatever it is. It's very, very simple doing this. I have a feeling this is something that can seem a little bit unapproachable, like difficult to understand, but it is actually very easy to understand. It's the same technique. You're just, instead of drawing a shadow there, I'm just drawing a bit of a collection of lines. You need to get pretty good at throwing your line and being, I've got a nice tight pencil too. That really helps. And so, let me continue this down here for the other side of this. And there's room for error, like what I did there. It's not 100% necessary that it be exactly like that. But that's the general, kind of idea. And that's really all there is to it. Drawing metal characters for me is really, really fast. I think it's the easiest way to draw a character. If I could just draw everybody covered in metal, it'd be, because I don't render from there. It's just done, just like that. A good ink or two makes it magical.
Let's see. How do you draw feet, or what is the process when you draw them?
Feet?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel so tempted to just say, here's how I draw feet. Here's my figure. Here's a leg. Here's another leg. Here's the mountain he's standing on.
There we go. Perfect tutorial.
Okay. So feet. All right. The first thing that I like to do, I'm going to draw a leg first, the lower leg. So here we go. And then we'll look at more just a foot on its own. I really like to, the bottom part of the leg, kind of shape it like this. So my ankle is actually part of the leg. I guess technically it is, right? I mean, it's the bone there. But anyway, I find that just really works for me. I'm going to tell you right now, I got this from toys. Like, imagine you've got your connection right there. And I find a lot of anatomy actually really can be easier if you think about it in those terms, and if you have a toy, that has articulation, that can be very helpful in figuring out how your characters move. Just be aware of the constraints that you have with a toy. There are things that it can't do. So now I'm going to draw my foot on there, and I'm just going to draw it at first. And so there you go, there's a foot. And that really doesn't cover a huge amount. What you really need to know from there is you've got a centerpiece basically here, a heel here, and then your toe here. And my toe is going to connect on like this. Give it a little shape here. Then I've got this piece here. This would be my top flat plane. If I'm simplifying, this would be my side plane. Just like this. And so I'm going to draw a foot kind of, from a bit of a different angle. So, well, actually, let's just draw from the side. So here's your your middle piece here. Your toe is going to connect just like this, and your heel is going to be basically like this. And then my ankle is going to connect on here. And so there's, basically a foot. I probably went a little bit too far here. I mean, we were drawing bell bottoms earlier. It might be getting there just a bit, but that's a really, really simple thing. And this is really your points of articulation in a foot too. Like this is where your toes would bend. So that's a helpful thing, but to make it just a little bit more useful in like a 3D, like I'm going to draw a foot that you're kind of, let's start so I'm going to draw a foot like this. We'll start with, this is the whole of my leg here. Hey, let's start another one and I'll do it a totally different way. All right, so I've got my leg there. I'm going to draw my center part like this. And then my toes are going to connect on like this. The inside bone extends out further and is further forward. It's not even. And I draw it basically like, imagine I've got a connection here too, like my toy. And so that would articulate up and down like that. Give it some dimension here. And then the back of my foot is going to connect like this. And that's really how I kind of think about my feet when I'm drawing them. I'm going to say from that angle, I don't know, because this would be the inside of my foot. I don't know that you would see quite so much of that toe because it's kind of, behind. So let me just go ahead and fix that. But yeah, there you go. That's basically how I approach a foot. I try and keep it relatively simple. And I find for me, these connection points really work for feet. And that's really how I approach it. If you want to get into toes, it's a whole other thing. But really, they're just stumpy hands, stumpy fingers.
Dave, if I may, so the one angle which personally kills me a bit is underneath, like bottom up.
Yeah.
From the foot. How would you using that construction?
Okay, so I've got my center bit here, my back here, and then my top here. But obviously that looks pretty flat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that would be like a bottom representation of that. And this is where, unfortunately, it does get to the point. I'm going to draw this here. So this bone is a little higher than this here. It's much flatter on this side. It comes in quite a bit here. And the toes kind of go like that. And so, from the bottom, you might have something that your pivot would be that's too low. But there, your heel is here. And that's, that's a foot from the bottom in really simple terms. Obviously, your insole would be kind of like this. So this doesn't hit the ground.
Yeah, I guess I should have been clearer. Like foreshortened, I guess.
Okay, foreshortened. So, yeah. And I did that actually with that boot. So I'm going to draw one from behind here. So let me start with my ankle. And my foot's going to be going down this way. So let's just start just to establish where my foot is. That's going to be the angle, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to draw my heel here. And then my toes are going to be here. This curves in here. And it would go basically just like that. There's going to be a certain amount of learning the shapes that comes into it. It's really difficult to accurately say, hey, using a really simple shape like that, you're going to get everything working. But that's basically it. If you have a shoe, let's do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a heel. So there's my heel there. And then you have an arch here. So I would need to curve down this way and then back up, and an arch here. And you'd end up with a shape more like this. Here's the back of like the back seam of my shoe. And you'd see the toes kind of coming up like that. And that's really more how it would look from that angle. And drawing it from the front is really the same. So, here's the let's see. This okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my foot just as a simple box like this. So I'm looking at my foot from this angle. My leg is coming here. Here's my ankle. I can't draw it just flat because it has a curve to it.
Mm-hmm.
So my heel's going to go in here. First of all, let me actually start to draw in a heel, and then my toes are going to take this kind of a shape on here. And that's just flat, and obviously it is not the best. It's pretty terrible, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my heel first on the back, and then I come up this way, and then I'm going to come down and then round around like this. And you can see because the other side has to attach too, you end up with something like that. Let me fix the top of that shoe.
So you upturn it slightly, and also the bridge of the foot you need to.
Yeah, because shoes aren't flat. This would be like a dress shoe.
Gotcha.
So there you go. That would be basically a foot from a couple of different angles looking up at it.
Awesome. Russ has got a question that he's asked you for actually quite a while. And how would you approach drawing knees?
Okay. Now, this is a broad question, Russ. Knees are a few different. Okay, let's just talk about a knee. I'm going to draw. Here's my leg. And we'll just draw a knee first, kind of anatomically from the front. So I've got a muscle here. This is the inside of my leg here. This is the outside. So this muscle connects a little higher. You got this muscle kind of between here. And my knee is going to take up a bit of a box shape like this. It's going to be a little higher here, this bone, than here. And then my lower leg is going to connect down like this. And this is also going to be a little higher. And my knee is going to sit in here. Basically like this. And so in really, really simple terms, that's it. But obviously, you know that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw like a kneecap here, and then another piece that connects under that kneecap. I still want to have a raised, like this would be a bit of a flat portion here. There's a tendon that runs along here, and there's a bit of a bone that it attaches to. This connects in here. You still see this bit here. And then you have muscles that connect up to your knee here. When I talk about, it doesn't need to be strictly super perfect in your anatomy. It really depends on your temperament. None of that's exactly perfect. I'm going to tell you that right now. I think you know that. So there you go. But there's my basic construction of a knee. From the side, this will be the front of my leg here. I'm going to draw this muscle here. My knee is going to be here. I mean, you can even just draw it as a sphere. And then the back of my leg, you should know that I'm not going to draw the front of my lower leg all the way back here, but it does come back. And then your lower leg, it's not even. Like you don't draw it all flat. So it really has a curve like this all the way through. And draw my ankle, my foot. So there's the space my knee is going to take up. I'm going to draw this right here. Here's my kneecap, my lower kneecap. This muscle connects in here. You've got a tendon that connects in here. And, from just a pure anatomical standpoint, you want to talk about like my knowledge. That's about as far as it goes, truthfully. And I don't really draw them like that, Now, in terms of lighting, let's take all this, lighten this down, and then show you how it actually light this. And this is really more how I would approach it. So here's this muscle here. I'm going to draw a nice big heavy shadow there where it connects up. Got a shadow in here, connecting to a bit of a tendon, just a bit of a line weight here. And now for my knee, I'm going to draw that here, and then this bit here. I try not to get too carried away drawing that detail in there because it can start looking a little odd. You just want it to be an indication. On the other side, I'll just give it a little bit here and another bit here. And then cast shadow over my calf. And that's really, all there is to it. I don't go crazy with knees. You can have a bit of a bone here and then start to draw in your shin and your other muscles kind of connecting up to it. But that's really, as far as I ever go in terms of detail with the knee. I'm not going to do the side. It would be the same. And then if your knee is bent, so I've got my upper leg here. My knee, I'm going to draw like a ball. And then here's my lower leg right here. And I'm going to draw my toy ankle right here. But it just works for me. So I like it. All right. So, and this is basically what I'm dealing with mechanically, like if it was a toy. But I need to draw a knee there. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remember that I have a shape that goes around the knee. So my muscles are going to connect around that. So I'm going to put this muscle here, and it doesn't strictly follow there. It's like I do something and I just contradict it, make it confusing. But that is kind of how the muscle attaches there. But for the other muscle, it's going to wrap around the knee here like this. And then my knee is I'll have my upper and lower kneecap here. This tendon is going to come in here. And then my lower leg is going to attach just like this here. And so that's kind of how I construct the knee. And this would be a bit of a flat plane here. And this would be a bit of a flat plane here. And so from here, what I really like is a Frazetta approach. I'm going to do that right now. And I do this all the time. And by the way, part of the reason it works so well, so this is a real plane change that you're getting. I'm totally light here and totally dark here, and it really helps sell the plane change. This is now facing away from the light. I'm just describing these kneecap shapes just as a bit of a shape just like this. And then these muscles, this muscle is going to have a shadow like this. This muscle is going to start here. That's going to connect in, and I keep it pretty simple. And I really do. So what I did here, not the most effectively, but I've got my shape for my knee like this. And I want to kind of describe how it's coming up into the leg. And so I could just draw like a line. I want to give it just a little character. So I do this a lot. I'll just kind of connect it like this and just do something like that. Even small, it can actually really give you like a nice little bit of facola anatomy. So there you go. And then obviously I've got this muscle here. So that's how I do knees all the time with that kind of a total cheat shape. Frazetta made it work on such realistic looking figures, and it looks great. I love it. And so I use it all the time. Where I run into trouble, and this happens, imagine I'm lighting this from below, and now I actually have to deal with that knee. And yeah, that's when I'm struggling. I'm on the struggle bus when that happens.
There's so many good questions in chat. I'll just say that it's pretty difficult to get to them all, so we're trying our best. Not encouraging spamming, but yeah, you can ask it more than once, and if I'll try my best to get to it. There was a super chat earlier. Let me get to it real quick. From Paul Ganguly. He asks, what's your process for choosing camera angles when laying out panels and pages? What cues in a script inform the artist how much or little to render?
Okay, now I'm going to just make an assumption. When you say how much or how little to render, you mean how many, like how broad or how close in you want to go with the shot. Now, a lot of times writers can be very specific, and so they kind of solve that problem for you, and sometimes will create problems of their own because their specifics actually counter maybe what would be the best choice. It's subjective. So, in my opinion, what would be the best choice? But generally speaking, writers tend to be comic writers. People that want to write comics tend to be very visual people also. So usually they're very good. Even writers that don't have as much experience that want to write comics, my experience, tend to have a pretty good ability to be able to visualize the scene. Digressing. So But for you want to figure out, okay, you want to show a scene and you want to know how far or close to go. I could draw, here, as just for instance, I've got Spider-Man talking to Wolverine, and so I'm just going to draw my general panel, and I'm going to draw the same exact scene, and let's do it 3 different ways. So Spider-Man is very upset about something, and Wolverine really doesn't care, which, that's kind of how that would be. So Spider-Man is here. This is like a close-up, basically medium close-up. And, he's pleading, here's his hands, and I didn't draw this the best, but he's, oh no. And Wolverine, I'm going to draw him here, and he's just, he doesn't care. He's just looking grumpy. So here we go. Here's my Wolverine. You can't even tell that, but this is how I'm going to kind of lay that scene out. And Spider-Man saying, whatever he's saying. And that is a really effective way if you really want to get that emotion. And that's a really important thing to get. Now, I'm drawing Spider-Man. He's got no emotion in his face generally. Imagine it's a character with emotion. I don't know why I said Spider-Man, but it's a really good way to really get a sense of exactly, by the way, because I'm looking up at him so much, I'd really want to make sure to be looking up at Wolverine. So let's draw more of the bottom of his chin and make sure that I'm consistent with my angle there. But that's a really good choice. What that does not get across, though, is environment. That just focuses just on the characters. And so now you have multiple panels, so you don't need every shot to show everything. But that's just a really effective way of getting across all the emotion in the face and everything. Another option, let's go the extreme other route. I'm just going to draw this really, really graphic. Here's my floor. I'm going to draw a chimney here, and another little thing here, and whatever. Here's a wall of something, and I've got Spider-Man. He's standing here, and Wolverine is standing here, and my word balloon would be here, and I really want this to be like a vignette. So it's really showing nothing but just like a far away kind of a scene. This to me wouldn't work for something where he's really concerned. This works for something that's a little bit more solemn, maybe. You pull away and give it some space and just make it a shadow. So it can be a really, really effective panel for mood, but it gives you a completely different vision of the scene than this. And obviously you'd want to make sure to pick the one that's the most useful for what you're thinking. Now here's another example. And this would kind of give you more room. This one, okay, you can't draw this every single time. Some comic artists do. I see it, and it's not good. You really don't want to be doing that all the time. So I'm going to draw Spider-Man here. We're looking down at him just a little bit, and he's pleading, whatever. Here's his legs. And Wolverine is here, and I can see just a little bit more of him, but it makes it just a little bit more impersonal. And this, to me, is never really as effective a panel as either this one or this one. But this is a panel that's absolutely necessary if you have 3 or 4 panels in a story, because you can't show the shot from the same angle all the time. You kind of have to move it around to make it interesting. So that's another idea there. But I wouldn't use that one for a shot that, if you have that moment where he's pouring out his soul, you don't want that panel. That one would be like a mid-speech kind of a panel. And then another option, let's just do the big splash shot here. And I'm going to draw Spider-Man. This is like the full, I don't want to get crazy drawing all kinds of body language and everything, but here's Spider-Man, here's Wolverine. And this is like your big anchor panel on the page. I can see, some stuff in the background and the whole thing. And you really get a sense of everything in the panel. And the benefit of this is it really showcases your heroes and, makes them look majestic. And look at that. That's cool. And they've got anatomy, and, it's a cool shot. And you need to have these kinds of things in there because, this is a fantasy. We want to put ourselves in the shoes of the heroes, and you need to see those big, huge, really cool shots. And the one other option, I'm not going to draw it, but the one other option would be to do essentially this or this, and do this and maybe cut it off kind of here, and do like a wider panel. And so you can see more, like if you want to see people in the background walking by and drinking coffee, cars going down the road, something to give it a lot of atmosphere. That's where you would choose that kind of a shot, or an introductory shot. That would be something more like, here's a building. They're on top of a building. That's kind of what I was thinking for this whole thing. And so here's Spider-Man here. Here's Wolverine here. I've got a chimney here, another one here, and then buildings all around, and like the whole, and you can see kind of the whole scene. And this really it pulls out. It's still a bit of an intimate shot because you can still see the characters. I'm not just going shadowed, but it's much more of an overall scene establishment. So those are all the choices, and the only thing that makes it right or wrong is choosing the moment for when you think you really want to focus in on that emotion. You can focus even more if you just show Peter Parker or Spider-Man's face, taking up the whole panel. So yeah, it's choices, and no choice is necessarily wrong, but they're going to give you a different story beat. And so it's something I think you need to look at it for yourself and say, okay, what am I trying to get out of this particular panel? And that's really how you base that decision.
Awesome. Let's see. Will Haydecker was asking, hey Dave, burned out on chasing deadlines with labor-intensive shots and style. Any tips on simplifying your style without feeling like you're sacrificing your art's impact?
Yes. Now, okay. I'm in a way, I'm going to tell you, I'm a bit of a bad person to ask because I over-render everything, and I don't have a simple style, and I am desperately afraid of simplifying too much. So I don't, so as much as I'd like to say, oh yeah, you just do this, and it's a really tough thing for me. Okay, I'm just going to, there's no right answer to this, unfortunately. But if I wanted to simplify my style and do it in the most effective way that I think I could make it work, I would do Mike Mignola, circa the first Hellboy. He did a Batman kind of Dracula. Was it Dracula? Anyway.
Gotham. What is it called?
Anyway, he did a Batman story. I think it was probably the only one he ever did. And the art in that. So here's a really good example of how you can make something like that work. So I've got my character, and
Gotham by Gaslight.
Oh yeah, okay. So I've got my character. So he did more than one. I wasn't actually thinking, but that is actually perfect.
Yeah.
Here's his symbol. He's walking along. Here's his belt. And I don't want to draw all the ground and everybody on the ground. I'll be there forever, And this isn't so much a detail thing as it's a stylistic choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw him here, and here's his other leg. I'm going to just kind of fade this out, just like this. And then I'll draw a person in the background. Here he is standing there, and I'll fade him higher because he's further back. So, the mist is kind of obscuring him a little bit more. Here's another person here, and I can fade that even higher. Then I can draw some buildings here and just draw the indication of the top of some buildings and just fade them. And you can look at Mike Mignola for this. He's a genius at doing this. There are other artists that have kind of taken on this style. To me, he's like the king and the originator of this kind of style where you're drawing and there's detail in there, but you're not killing yourself drawing, the ground and cans rolling around and like the nonsense. Nonsense. This is what I draw. I draw the cans roll around on the ground. But and I have done this before very, very effectively. Like when I've tried it, I've really, really liked it. That is a way that you can simplify your art and make it. And he has a great design sense. I'd say, look at his stuff for his design sense. You can incorporate that with the work you're doing. It will speed you up immensely. And actually, probably, or possibly, depending on how much you gravitate to it, make you a better artist because you're really focusing on, the elements that you really want to show and not wasting that time on extraneous detail. I would recommend giving that a try.
Awesome. The question was asked as well, David, can we put these images up somewhere after the stream?
Sure. Yeah, I'll scan them and I'll put them up in the community tab.
Yeah.
They will be on the community tab. My scans are massive, so I'll have to size them down a bit, but they'll be pretty big.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Let's see. It's a pretty good question. David has covered this recently, and he's got a tutorial on shape language. But Caden Townsend was asking, could you go over the shapes or angles that you use for shadows? I noticed that the shadows you use give a 3D look, and help define the shapes of anatomy without adding so many hard lines.
Well, thank you. Gosh, you kind of have me a little bit stumped, to be totally honest. Yeah, all I can really do is just draw something. I mean, I have a whole philosophy behind how I use shape language for shadows. Really watch that video. I think that covers that much better than I'm going to be able to here, but I'm going to try. So I'm just going to draw a face. We'll just keep it pretty standard. Here's a nose. Here's my mouth. Draw the hair is basically a simple shape. My ear. The problem is when I really chintz out the shadow. See, okay, the shadow that I do can only work or be strong if the underlying drawing is strong. If it's not, my shadow is also going to look clunky and not great. So it's a little limited on just how much I can show here, unfortunately. But let me try and clean this face up a little bit just to give us a little more to work with. See, the shadow on that nose is not going to work unless the underlying anatomy of that nose works. That's my Kevin Nolan nose, or my attempt at it anyway. And, you know, the subtleness of the shape of your face, again, is going to affect your shadow. So, yeah. When you think about shadow, you really have to think of it as an extension of form. If the form is bad, the shadow is not going to save it. But, you know, it can help. Okay, so I'm going to draw a shadow under his eye here. And when I draw it, I'm not just drawing just a curve like this. I'm always kind of breaking things up and doing basically a line of beauty, but I give it a hard point instead of a soft line like that. And I do that everywhere. I did it here, probably uselessly. Like it probably is, you know, not even anatomically correct, but I don't know, because I don't care because I like it. So I'm going to draw the edge of his nose here. Do the same kind of a thing. I just gave it a bit of a shape there. I have to be very careful. I want that to be a bump and not get too carried away. But if, you know what? Let me close in on this. Hold on. All right. So I'm going to draw a shadow underneath my nostril here and see how the shape of that nostril is very important to making that shadow work. And now I'm going to draw a shadow from the nose. And it is relatively hard lines that I'm drawing there, but I'm drawing the shadow from the nose there. And I don't have the rest of my shadows established yet because I'm really thinking of each one individually. They're all coming from the same place, but I want to think of each one individually, and then I can kind of connect them. Because I've got such heavy shadow onto this eye, now I know on the other eye I need to be pretty heavy. It's further away from the light, so I'm just going to go nice and shadowed there and even just give it like a peak. That might be a little bit exaggerated, but I like it. I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to shadow this in here just like this. My mouth, I want to keep this pretty thin because I'm looking down at that mouth a little bit. I don't want to make a broad shadow there. It'll start looking a little out of place. And he's got that little piece right there. I'm wider at the top than I am at the bottom. That's a thinner line there, and it gets wider there. And the reason for that is it's a shape like this, and I'm lighting from up. I'm off the page. It's a shape like this, and I'm lighting from up here, so it's going to naturally be more shadowed here, and then the light's going to start to catch it as we, you know, come down. And so that's why it has that kind of a shape to it. And I went with a hard point. Like it is actually, when you said that I'm not making them angular, I really do make them angular. I'm always thinking kind of in those terms. Like this will be a curve downward like this, and then these will curve the other way like this, and it just gives it just
so much more visual interest on a harder line.
some triangles there. I'm just going to shadow that out, cast a shadow from the mouth, and then I basically continue the whole thing like this. This side here of the cheek is a real problem because it's very easy to overshadow and make this whole face dark. So what I'm going to try and do is just define some of the shape of my cheek just like this. I'm going to come up here and kind of connect to it and see how I'm. There is actually a little bit of anatomy that connects like this, just under here. And I'm kind of taking advantage. So I'm kind of curving up to it and then creating this shape here by using that, just like that. But I don't want it to be quite so clearly defined, or maybe, I don't know. We'll see where we're at. But that's basically it. A little more shadow there. And I really should have more shadow on the chin because it's rolling down underneath. I don't want to go too far with it, but there, that's just a little bit better. Now for my furrow in the brow, I'm going to curve this way and then come up this way. Yeah, look, it's just a much more interesting shape than if I just went, round. And I can even connect another little shape in there and just use that. And now all of a sudden I'm drawing a little bit in there that inserts, and another line that's doing the same kind of a thing. You get comfortable with this kind of line. It is so versatile, and it'll give you it's not just, hard lines. It's connected curves using a line of beauty and using a line of beauty with a hard point, and it just works so well for me. I always love using it. Cast a shadow from the hair here. And there you go. That's kind of how I shadow everything all the way down the body. I think in terms of like on the arm here, I've got this muscle here, and so I'm going to light that. And then I've got this muscle here. I'm going to light that, and then make them all kind of connect together. And I'm off the camera again. I wasn't showing much, but there you go. Let me zoom back out so I'm not flying off the camera all the time.
Let's see. Greg L. Stegar is giving thanks for the stream. Doug is super chat with $5. Thank you. Michael DeFonte, thank you, David and Eric, for tonight's stream, as well as one R.
Well, thank you, everybody. Really, very
super chat. Jim Klein, David, I realize not your style, but do you have any tips for working in a more cartoony style with less rendering and focusing on heavier brush lines with flowing weights? I love the elegant lines of Romita, Byrne, Bocello, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I guess you could say that Romita and Byrne are a little more cartoony. I don't think of them that way. They're really, they're very realistic artists, but they simplify more. So it's more, things are a little more concise and simplified. But let me just start to draw a figure. And we'll talk about it. I need a stamp for figures so we can just start talking about the, what we're talking about with them. Like every time I have to establish a figure first, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So here's my figure, my chest. Get this kind of, my head was off there. And I'm not going to draw too much detail here. I don't really need it. I'm just going to draw just enough that we'll kind of get this, I guess, the technique across. And so you don't have to draw with a ton of shadow. That's all I'm going to draw. Let me lighten it down. We'll imagine this is a John Byrne figure with like a hood that's flat. So I'm not drawing a face. So I'm going to start with, I guess, his arm here. And I know where my anatomy is. You really need to, let me just draw it in just for this time. I've got a muscle here. Your deltoid is 3 muscles that connect and kind of have a bit of a shape like that toward the bottom. And then your bicep connects in like this. I really like to draw this plane. This is such a Bridgman kind of a thing, just so I can see that plane change. I really like to do it that way. So I'm going to do it. And my tricep is going to connect in here. Got another muscle that connects in here. It has a name. It's called another muscle. And then I've got my forearm here. And I want to, get all those muscles established. The more you do this, the more you'll see these even before you render these in, and you need to do it a little bit less, but you want to make sure that's a while down the road. Cheating on that too early, you're really cheating yourself. Like I was working professionally, drawing every little muscle for probably 3 years. And that was painful as a professional artist. Every single figure, no matter how small, I had to have every little muscle in there or I couldn't do it. And I remember Mark Silvestri walking by the table and just rolling his eyes. But, what could I do? Like he tried to help, Eric. He tried so hard. But I just, and I got so much help from him. But in some ways I was so stubborn. I don't know. All right, so there you go. There's my basic figure. I've got my anatomy, kind of drawn in there, so I know where everything is. If you notice, my anatomy is not perfect. You're right, it's not perfect. All right. So I'm going to lighten that down again because I don't want all that anatomy in there. But what I want to do is I'm going to light it again my standard way. So when I put my line weights in, what becomes most important here, and I did a video about this, is line weight and overlapping. So this is going to overlap over this. It's in front. This is going to overlap here, just like this. I'm going to have a nice big heavy line weight here. This is why, by the way, we had Klaus Janson as a guest a few weeks ago, and Klaus was talking about using really, really heavy line weights at times. Something he doesn't do quite as much, but I think is a style that really, really works for an artist like John Romita Jr. It just gives it so much solidity. So I'm going to go nice and heavy here. Nice. And this is, by the way, it's curving away from light here. Like this is rounding around. So if it was a sphere, my shadow would all be here. So that's all I'm doing is I'm just using that to basically describe a very simplified lighting. Just like this. I've got a little kick of shadow in there. So I'm not shadowing this, but I am getting just enough in there to give me a sense of anatomy. And this is actually exactly how I draw women, because you draw every muscle on a woman, and depending on the woman, obviously, but for a more feminine, traditionally feminine woman, you don't want to get too carried away. And this is all just line weights. And so I'm taking my style and I'm losing a lot of the detail, but I'm trying to keep the essentials that really make it work. I don't need to have all of those muscles drawn in there. I just need an indication of them. And I know where they're going because I drew them in. So I can kind of just outline and I'll give this just a little nick in there just so I can kind of see it. You can see that it looks like pretty finished anatomy. I'm really doing very, very little. And a lot of artists really have a style that is just like this. It's a more, I guess, quote unquote cartoony style, if you want to call it that. It's not as shadow heavy or rendering heavy, and I think for a lot of people it's actually much more pleasing. I know a lot of comic fans find this a lot more attractive than the kind of work that I do that's very overwrought. I'm not going to call it overwrought, Eric. I'll call it wrought because I like it. But yeah, anyway, that might even be too much there. But Alan Davis, actually highly recommend looking at Alan Davis if you're interested in that kind of a style. He is so good at figures that are like this. My anatomy is not the best here, but this is really all that's there. But it looks like this incredible detailed anatomy, even though he's really just putting in basically this kind of level of detail. It's great.
Awesome. Let's see. Let's go back here real quick. Hansel said, "Thank you for inspiration. I have a hard time rendering dark materials, muscles on darker skin tones, dark metal, black latex, etc. What is the best way to approach that?" Yeah, it's a common problem I have, Dave, as we know.
Yes. So
very good
now, what I'm going to do with this figure right here is the first thing we're going to do is light it more heavily. Not more detailed, just more heavily. And so I've got it lit from here. And so like I showed here, I've got a plane change here. I'm just going to shadow that. And I've got a plane here. and I'm just being much more aggressive with my lighting. It's the same. I'm just being much darker, and this is all I have to do. And this is if you want something to have a very matte finish, but be dark. So I'm just shadowing a lot more heavily. I'd have a shadow from the my anatomy's messed up here, and I'm not going to fix it for this, but like this got a little odd in this area here. And my stomach, I'm just going to make that dark. I mean, that's that's really planed away from the light. So let's just make that completely dark. And this is really all I'm doing is just taking this really to I don't want to say the next level because it's not improving it, but I guess the next level in terms of heavy shadow. I hope that makes sense. I feel like when I say the next level, it sounds like I'm making it better. That's not what I mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. I mean, that's really the same thing, just shadowed much more darkly. Now, if I want this to be reflective, all I need to do, and I have a couple of ways I can do this. I can use the Fresnel effect where and let me do that first. So I'm just going to go on the other side here and light the other side. And we're going to do essentially what we did with that arm before. And the Fresnel effect really very, very good at making something look reflective or specular. Because, and let me tell you why. So if I'm lighting something and my light is hitting here, I've got my shadow over here, and that's fine. But if I have something that is really, really reflective, I'm going to get a really hot highlight right here, and then everything's going to be quite a bit darker. So I could light it all the way around. And then I could render it kind of into that spot. I'm drawing this so badly, I feel like I'm actually like proving myself wrong because it looks so bad. It's not, it doesn't look right. But I mean, that's really how you would approach that. You really see that light, really where the light is hitting exactly. And so that's kind of what this is doing. But I don't have to do that. I could actually just shadow both sides, just like this, and just fill that in. So there it is, all filled in, and you can see. Look at how that looks like a latex kind of a. Now maybe latex is a little bit more reflective than that, but like a more of a dull leather. But it gives you the reason why that works is you can see the light is hitting all the way through here, all the way down. Yeah. And you can take that further and further and just have a little narrow band of lighting, which I'm sure you guys have all seen. Artists that will do that. They'll draw like the glove on. So here's Batman's glove. Okay, and I'm gonna just draw a band of he's got some kind of folds indicated here, and then this will just be dark. Just gonna make a mess of it because I don't, I think you guys kind of get the picture. But this is very common. Artists will do this, and this is really just using this exact effect. What you're seeing is exactly where the light's hitting it, and it just ends up looking much more reflective or shiny. Does that mean the same thing? I don't know, but it's a shinier surface, and you see how that really kind of works. So there you
go. Where's that question?
You gotta cue these up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to them all. There's Tyler asked a good question, and it kind of. I think there was a super chat earlier as well that was similar. Give me 1 second, dude. Maybe not. It might have been another question in chat. But Tyler was asking, repost my question. Hi, David. Do you have any tips on placing black shapes in the scene to create depth and enhance the focal point? There was a similar question earlier where someone was asking about creating depth, I guess, like foreground, middle ground, background.
Right. Okay. So now I've talked about this a few times, but there's a few ways you can create depth. We did a review stream and I'm sure some of you guys have seen that. And so many of the artists there were doing this so incredible. Actually, every technique that I know very effectively. But here's a chimney, and it's just going to be light. And then here's another chimney behind it, and it's dark. And another chimney here, and it's going to be light. And then I'm going to put, another one here and make it dark. And what I'm doing is really pushing things back just with dark and light. It's very, very simple, obviously, but you use this effect in something that's a little more properly drawn, and it can really create so much depth. And that's just layering your shadows. Now, imagine that these are buildings. So let's, here's my windows, and I've got a figure, and he's walking, and I can draw a shadow from, now this building ends up, that's way too wide. So let's narrow that right down. And he's walking through the shadow here, and then I've got another shadow here coming from this building. And look at the depth that I'm getting from that. Make this wider. Just from using that kind of layering. And I saw some people doing this really effectively too. This is a technique that Brian Azzarello does beautifully. I recommend if you're interested in these kinds of scenes drawn beautifully using this kind of a layering shadow across the ground, and pushing things
Eduardo
back.
Rizzo as well is very good at that.
Did I say Brian Azzarello?
Yeah.
He's the writer. I mean, Eduardo Rizzo.
Yeah.
Eduardo Rizzo. 100 Bullets, recommend. Just bear in mind that 100 Bullets can be a little bit not safe for work. I'll put it that way. So yeah. That's layering. And then, the other technique obviously is, you guys have seen this enough times, but here's my panel. I've got somebody, sitting on the ground. And I'm going to draw, a shadow coming from him this way. And I'm going to cast a bit of a shadow onto the wall behind him, just like this. So here we go. But I really want to kind of frame that. And so now what I could do is just really frame that. And I could even do like, blinds. A real Frank Miller kind of noir effect. And use my side of the pencil. So we're not here all day. And now I'm looking all the way out past here, which is fine. But I could also cut that window off here and really frame them. And that's just using a shadow to frame, just on a flat surface. It's very simple kind of shadowing, but this kind of thing here works in so many ways. And what I would recommend, to really get a good understanding of how to make this work, is two things. Old film noir is so good to look at because they do this so well, but also comic artists that are really good with using shadow, like Eduardo Rizzo. Highly recommend. Or Mike Mignola is another artist that's an absolute genius at this. Does it beautifully. And it is the same technique every time. There are variations depending on the scene, but the actual technique doesn't change that much.
Cool. Let's see. SCS Powerlifting, $5 super chat. Thank you, Dave and Eric, for taking the time to teach us little tricks and answer questions.
Pleasure, and thank you very much. Good to see SCS here.
Adam Gehring, I think I pronounced it, sent a super chat as well, $5. Thank you. There wasn't a message; it was just a super chat, as well as Tomic Art did the same. Arachnon, I caught streaming first time in forever. Will you be going to any Ontario conventions this year? We'd love some DF prints on the wall.
Well, thank you so much. I don't actually have plans for Ontario conventions right now. The best I could say is if you're in the Windsor area, bring your stuff by Paper Heroes on Howard, and I'll sign it for you.
Let's see. Michael Johnson Curry. I kept running into editors and critiques just saying my work is mediocre and generic. Any tips on ways to fix this and make the work stand out more?
This is from Michael Johnson Curry?
Yeah.
That seems like a very broad and negative comment. Generic and what?
Mediocre.
Mediocre. Okay. Well, yeah. Look, that's very broad. They're effectively telling you that they don't feel like it's what they want to publish. That's really what you kind of have to take from that. So I have found sometimes editors will ask for change after change after change, and you can drive yourself crazy trying to change things. What they're ultimately really saying is, I'm a comic book editor, not an artist, so I really don't know how to fix this, but I'm just going to throw things out there because just generally I don't like it. That's really what it means. So what they're saying is there's something that they're not liking, and that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be um, a lot of times because they're looking for a specific style, and that's not that style. And so they're just saying, generic. Like frankly, that is a term that some people use to describe mainstream comic art. I mean, and I hate to say it, but it is something that you hear. So it's not such an uncommon thing from some people, so that editor might just be looking for something that's more edgy and more indie looking. And you always have to bear in mind that different editors have not only different tastes but also different priorities depending on the character that they're editing, because those different characters have different looks. Now, aside from that, really what I would say is, um, the only thing you can really do, ultimately, the only thing you can do, and your work is great, um, but it can always be better. And you can make a leg better or an arm better. Like you can get better at those things. And I would say, um, you can get in your head about that kind of stuff, and it can be very negative. Or you could just keep focusing on, like for me, I can get very negative about that kind of thing. And I've found that unfortunately, there's no nice way around it. It just is what it is. I mean, you work on the work and improve, or you um, can be defeated. And focusing too much on the negative things that people say is just a way of being defeated. You need to be focusing on the things that you can do to improve, and we can all get better. I'm trying every day to get better. We all are. So when I say that, bear that in mind. I mean, we all need to just keep getting better. And that's really what you need to just be focusing on, is just always getting better. And everything else, it falls into place in its time.
Yep. Let's see. I think you've covered this in detail tonight, and I think it's easily extrapolated. I think from what you showed. But Greg L asked, "How about shorter hair like Bruce Wayne or Cyclops?" Um, yeah, I think what you showed.
Well, I showed that from behind. So let's show that from more like a 3/4, I guess. And we'll draw Cyclops because what the heck? I haven't drawn Cyclops for a while. So here's my Cyclops. Now I'm drawing with a hood. Yeah, there's no help for me. All right.
Cyclops or Frozone, right?
Yeah. You'll notice this is basically the same angle that I did for that last. You know what? I don't have time to be drawing a different head because I chose the same angle. This is kind of like my default 3/4 angle. And I do very much try to not rely on it too much. Like, oh, it's going to drive me crazy. I got to do it now. I'm sorry, everybody, but I'm going to draw a different angle. Let's just bring it. And all I'm going to do is I've got my center line here, right? I'm just moving it further over here. And so that actually takes this and makes this just a little bit wider. And so now I'm looking at it not quite from a 3/4, but more of it's not a profile either. It's closer to a profile than, yeah, you know what I mean. All right. So now my nose is actually going to move past this plane here. And at least I'm not drawing the same angle. I'm not going crazy with it. I mean, we're here to draw the hair, so I don't want to draw some crazy angle. So here we go. There's my my Cyclops, and you can see for me to finish his hood would be very easy. It's just my basic head construction. Here's my ear connection. We're not doing that though. So for that kind of a hairstyle, let's draw in my ear. I know he would have that covered, but whatever. We're going to draw an ear, and I want to. My forehead is going to be just about here. So my eyes, the top of my eyes, this would be my eyebrows to my nose to my chins, but even divisions, and I've got about another even division here. I'm going to start my hair just below that, just about here in the center. And then I've got another point just here, just above the center of the ear. It comes out along the temple and then connects like this. So the first thing that you really want to focus on is basically the shape that you're dealing with for that hair. I mean, I'm basically drawing the metal guy, Colossus right now, but there you go. In really, really simple terms, that's what you're drawing, but obviously that's not what we want. So I'm going to part it from here. I'm going to draw my nice line of beauty all the way down like this. Give it a nice peak here. You'll notice that in actual people, the hair on the side kind of goes downward more, and I always rake it back as if it's kind of combed back, but it just looks better, and so that's how I do it. Looks better to me. Now the other side, I created a bit of a shape like this because I've got it wrapping up like this, but then I wanted to wrap over like this. And now the top of the hair, I'm going to bring out like this and give it a bit of a peak along the back here. And I'm just going to run my basic line of beauty all the way along that. And that's really, now let me give it just, I felt like that was a bit too much of a gap there. So I just drew another hair in there and I'll just erase it in. So now I'm going to make this dark. We're going to go fairly simple here, but this is going to be dark. And then this will be dark here too. And I don't want that to be a hard line. So I'm going to attach some hair in there. And I don't like how I have that line looking there. By the way, this happens to me all the time. Some artists, I don't know, there's some things that, and I think every artist has their strengths and weaknesses. I tend for this kind of hair I kind of have to triangulate my way into it sometimes. Like it just doesn't naturally, I don't have a solid enough simple method, apparently, I guess. So I'm going to want to create a shadow line along here and fill this in. And then I'm going to create another one along here. And the reason I'm doing this is exactly the same thing that I did with the other side of this paper. Hold on. With this arm. So because it's darker and more reflective, I can actually see where the light's hitting. And so that's why on this hair, I've got a band here like this. And that band is like a lifesaver because look at how easy this made it for me now. All that trouble that I would have if he was blonde, gone. And then this here, I'm going to start dark. And then I don't want too much of that detail that I really roughly put in. I wouldn't make it quite so rough, but I'm just going to kind of break it up enough so you can see a little bit of detail, but nothing crazy. It can just fill in basically mostly dark. So there you go. And then a little bit of rendering just like this. Maybe a little stray hair here or there. And there is how I do this kind of hair. Basically, I feel like I got too big with that peak there. I want to fix it. You know what? I'm fixing it. You guys are paying good money. Let's fix that properly. That was way too big. Some of you guys are actually paying money. So yeah, I'm joking, but I guess I'm also serious. So there you go. I think that's a little better. There's my basic, kind of Bruce Wayne Cyclops hair. I also could comb it just straight back. I mean, there are variations, but that's basically the idea. It's very simple, that kind of hair. So this is where you really want to, look for the next question.
Yeah, I have one loaded, ready to go. Please explain and it just moved. Please explain the Loomis 3/4 method view from the back. Cake Noodles asks, he's having a hard time with that.
Loomis 3/4 view
from the back. I think he drew some this evening when drawing out the hair from the back, kind of the Loomis construction from the back.
Oh, okay. So here's my chest. Now I'm just going to concentrate on the upper body here, because I'm assuming that's what you meant. We'll see. But my armhole is going to be here. Okay, and my center line is going to be here. My neck is going to be here. My other armhole is going to kind of be invisible back here. And my center line at the front is going to be like this. Now, my trunk, I guess, whatever, the stomach area is going to attach like this. So on a heroic figure, you really want the peak of the back to be kind of behind the shoulders. And then it tucks in here. My pelvis is going to be essentially like underwear for very to make things much easier. I really like just drawing a flat line along here, and then I kind of can connect my hip bone to that. I'm going to draw this leg straight. I want to bend the other leg, so if I've got my hip bone, it would actually be around there on the other side. And that connects to the outside of that leg. My leg is going to be here because it's connecting to that hip bone, and then I could just make an absolute botchery of that. And that makes that leg connect properly, as opposed to connecting too high or too low, which is very, very easy to do. Now, you can see that I've got my chest, my neck is kind of drawn here. It looks like I'm drawing it sloped off the back, pointed out this way. I actually really should be drawing like a dotted line for that because it would be pointing forward. So what you're seeing here is this would be my back. My neck is going to come out of here, and it's a tube coming out like this. I want my ear to be out about like there on the tube. This muscle is going to be here. Then my head is going to connect. Here's the center of my head, center of my neck, and it's going to connect basically like this. And now we also need to have an arm on there. I'm going to draw a ball for my arms just to start, just to give me like a starting point. Here's one arm. My other arm is going to connect also from that ball. And obviously you want to give that, a bit of a nicer shape and make it a little more anatomical, but just as a construction, that ball actually really can be very helpful. So there you go. There's figure 3/4 from behind. Simply, say the least. See, look at this. I don't like what I have there. And you know why? Because I didn't have any, even my basic construction, I just started getting lost. So let me finish out that tube. I'm going to draw a ball for the knee and then the lower leg. These tubes even will be a challenge until you get used to it. So there we go. This leg is going to be here. I'm going to draw my ball here. My other leg is going to be here. I could draw through to really, place that foot. But anyway, there you
go. Let's see. Daniel L asks again, hey Dave, if it's not too much trouble, could you show how to draw textures, wood, for example, from the reference?
From reference?
Yeah.
And now that's tougher.
Yeah, because you have to find the reference.
Yeah. So if I was going to draw like a tree, the bark from reference, if you're drawing something that's really like it's got really dramatic lighting, then it makes it really easy because like here's my tree trunk. And if it's lit from here, then I'm basically drawing a shadow along here. And all of my bark is just going to be drawn from there, and that makes it pretty easy. I wouldn't reference bark because, I mean, geez, man, be there all day. Like you really need to find a bit of a shorthand for that. But I don't need to draw bark all the way around the tree. I just need to draw enough that it kind of gives me the indication of it, and I can kind of fade it out. Just a couple little details, little nicks and hits here and there where it's still catching. And then toward the light side, you really don't see it at all. I don't want it to be so smooth either. Like, let me give that just a little bit of, because the bark actually has some shape to it too. So there you go. There's like, a basic, very simple kind of tree bark. So, you're thinking about it in terms of rounding a form with it. It's almost like a rendering. So much rendering can be accomplished just using textures. And so this is like a tree bark texture. And all I'm doing for that is I'm drawing like this kind of a shape. I've got a shadow on this side. It's what it is this kind of a shape here. And I'm just simulating that by drawing heavier on the bottom because it's, totally away from the light. And then since my lighting's coming from here, a bit of shadow here. And then I can just connect these. Just like this. Another one here. Another one here. And see how this is kind of overlapping. So the shadow's thinner here because this is above this. Basically, if I have a ball in a wall and I draw my shadow right here, my ball is basically right next to that wall. If I draw a ball and a wall and my shadow is here, my ball is like, 100 yards away from the wall, whatever it is. It's much, much further. That shadow is really projecting. And the shadow also probably would stretch out just a little bit. But it gets much, much further away. So using that, hopefully this makes sense because this is closer. The shadow actually has a bit further of a distance to travel to get to this one. So I just make the shadow just a little thicker there and it really sells it. Now, if you try and do this over a tree, like that's very, very cleaned up and like very, this would start to get really methodical. And I think it would start to look a little odd and mechanical. I mean, I guess if that's what you wanted, you could have a very mechanical looking tree. So I'm doing effectively that, but just, much more loose and organic with it. And that's how I would do that. Now to reference, I mean, this would be a good way to use reference, but then to still be able to not lock yourself into drawing every little tiny shadow in your reference and be in there for a week. So it is 10:03. I think we're going to wrap it up there.
I think, Dave, I think there's just one more super chat here from Sean J. And I think you covered earlier, if I can interpreting his super chat correctly. He says, "Hey Dave, I was curious how you render two different ways on a muscle from multiple light sources. I don't know how else to describe it, but Dale Keown does it all the time. Also, have you thought of doing a Nick Mandat tribute stream?"
I think I should really enjoy doing a Nick Manabat tribute stream. Nick Manabat was an artist at Wildstorm when I got there. He was an absolutely incredible artist. He was actually Joe Benitez, who was a very, very good friend of mine, his best friend. And he unfortunately passed away I want to say just about a year after I started. I think he'd been there for a year or 2 years before I got there, and maybe just a year even. So, he had a brilliant career. I mean, beautiful, beautiful work. I don't know the kind of work that he'd be doing now, but he died very, very young, unfortunately. It was very sad. So yeah, I think I would actually really enjoy that. And he was such a nice guy. He was very, very quiet. And I was very quiet, especially when I got there, So I think we got along in the sense that, I didn't bug him too much. He was very nice, but he was very quiet. So the question is like a Dale Keown type of a lighting. And so if I were to draw like a let's say like a chest, right? Here's my arm kind of coming off of it, and the other side. Nick Klein, by the way, does this beautifully. He is so good at this kind of lighting. I did this a little bit back in the 90s. I was really trying to work with like a Dale Keown kind of a thing. I found it never got really comfortable for me. So I kind of backed away and went for more of an angular Simon Bisley based approach. And I found that worked better. So I stopped doing this, but it's a beautiful way of working. So what you're doing really is you're lighting from the top here and from the bottom, which is difficult. Now, if you do that on a ball, here's my ball. Basically what you're doing is your shadow is like that. And that's really what we're doing. So I'm going to light this from the top here. My core is going to be like my core shadow is going to be like right here, pretty high. And so here's my anatomy along the top, kind of connecting my, and my shoulder will do the same thing. Let's kind of get that in. So nothing really changes up here too much. So here we go. Do the other side. I'm not doing this beautifully. I mean, unfortunately, but hopefully the concept makes sense. And then what I'm doing is I'm just uplighting this from below. So I'm actually really lighting this. This is lit from above and this is lit from below. Lighting things from below is very difficult for me. Very easy for some other artists. I find I tend to struggle just a bit with it. I start getting lost. And so here we go. This is all lit from below here, so keep it fairly simple. And then the other thing that he would really do that would be amazing, that really starts to sell this, is this whole chest would actually be casting a shadow onto the rib cage below. And because the rib cage is catching the light from above, you would get this cast shadow. But then when you come under toward the stomach, you would start getting light again. So I would have a core shadow here, and then my stomach would all be, again, lit from below. And when this is done well, it's beautiful. It's hard. It really is. I mean, Dale Keown is revered because he does this so well. I don't know of another artist. This is a very common image technique, but no other artist out there has ever pulled it off anything like Dale Keown. And I'm probably humiliating myself right now trying.
Wow, that's good.
Well, thank you. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up.
Yeah. Richard Dunn had a $10 super chat. There was no message. He just sent a chat. And then lastly, Jim Klein saying, "Well, thank you, Dave, Eric, and Russ for all the hard work on tonight's stream. This sort of rapid fire stream seems like it's really hectic to run, but it is super helpful to all of us. You're all right."
Hectic for Eric because I finished it wrong, and then I'm like, "Wait, next question," because I'm all amped up. This is a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had so much fun doing this. I definitely would like to do it again. So maybe we do this like a monthly, whatever. We'll do it again either way. But I want to thank all of you so much for all the great questions. This was great. I'm looking forward to the next one and seeing what the questions are from that. So yeah, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week for a live stream, I'm pretty sure. But if not, I'll have a video out very, very soon. It'll be part 2 to my how to get started learning how to draw comics kind of mini series. So either way, I will see you soon. Thank you much, everybody.
See you, everyone.